Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening. It's Monday, September 26th. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Fall in San Diego County doesn't mean leaves changing color or cooler temperatures. Well, this week it means another heat wave and heightened fire risk. KPBS reporter Jacob Ayer shows us the other challenges this latest stretch of hot weather brings.
Almost all of San Diego is under heat advisory through Wednesday. Coastal areas could reach 90 degrees, and in the valleys like Escondido, El Cajon, and Santee, triple-digit temperatures are expected. The National Weather Service's Alex Tardy says this heat wave is milder than the last one, which baked much of the western United States and strained the power grid.
This current heat wave, today, tomorrow, and Wednesday, we're looking at temperatures not as extreme, but still hot. We're also looking at nighttime temperatures, not as warm, but still much warmer than usual.
Many San Diegans are finding ways to stay cool during the heat wave. That includes swimming at public pools, but a reduction in hours is causing some frustration. The city of San Diego's Tim Graham told KPBS that the nationwide shortage in carbon dioxide and some vandalism incidents have resulted in additional pool closures. In a written statement, he said they're trying to find a better way of notifying the public on temporary closures and usually just post it at the particular facility for those issues. An excessive heat warning is in effect until 11 p.m. Tuesday for San Diego County deserts, with temperatures expected to peak around 110 degrees. Tardy says the countywide heat is drying up vegetation and increasing wildfire risk.
Are we in severe fire weather conditions? No, not yet, because of that rain we had earlier this month, but this is going to erase a lot of that benefit. So when we go into October and we do start actually developing Santa Ana winds, the fuels are going to be receptive to burn.
The National Weather Service is advising everyone to stay hydrated and limit their time outside, especially between 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. The county is also offering some relief at cool zones across the region. Residents can call 211 to request information and even schedule a free ride to a cool zone. Jacob Ayer, KPBS News.
San Diego County leaders say they will declare homelessness a public health crisis. This follows California's Attorney General warning to El Cajon after it threatened to fine hotel and motel owners for accepting county vouchers to house people seeking shelter. KPBS reporter Alexander Nguyen has the latest developments.
El Cajon Mayor Bill Wells has accused the county of dumping unsheltered individuals in his city. He says a lot of unsheltered people living in motels in El Cajon under a county voucher program are from outside the area. Last week, the city issued warnings to the 8 hotels and motels participating in the program, threatening them with fines. On Friday, Attorney General Rob Bonta said El Cajon is violating the law and told the city to rescind the warnings, earning praise today from County Supervisor Nathan Fletcher.
So I appreciate the Attorney General saying you're not going to violate every state and federal housing law, not here in California.
Fletcher and other local leaders say they plan to declare homelessness a health crisis. In doing so, the county will act as a backbone for collaboration between the county's 18 incorporated cities and the Task Force on Homelessness. It will make it easier to develop a regional approach to homelessness, such as outreach services, mental health assistance, and creating more affordable housing. Supervisor Nora Vargas says it's the county's responsibility to keep unsheltered individuals safe.
Our commitment as a county is unwavering. We're going to do everything that we can to make sure that we use resources adequately, and we need to not forget that these are human beings and that we need to treat them with dignity and respect, and they deserve to be treated that way.
The proposal will be introduced at the Board of Supervisors meeting Tuesday. El Cajon's mayor plans a news conference about homelessness before that meeting. In the meantime, El Cajon has rescinded its warnings after what it said was a productive meeting with hotel and motel owners. Alexander Nguyen, KPBS News.
Governor Gavin Newsom has vetoed a bill that would have made kindergarten mandatory for every child in California. The law had wide support from educators and a majority of state lawmakers. KPBS education reporter MG Perez has more.
And you see everybody doing it. Strong, point your fingers.
Judy Nguyen's lesson is all about letters this afternoon. She has a class of 25 kindergartners here at the high-tech High Mesa Elementary School. 5-year-old Rain knows her letters well. What's your favorite letter?
R.
Why?
Because it starts with my name.
Her classmate Ion enjoys putting pencil to paper, too.
My favorite part of school is Writer's Workshop.
Why?
Because you get a long time to do it.
California children have not been required to go to kindergarten before entering first grade. This year, the state legislature tried to change that, passing Senate Bill 70, following a significant drop of 12% in kindergarten enrollment during the COVID crisis shutdowns. They had hoped to close the academic gap for students from marginalized communities. But Governor Newsom vetoed the bill last night, saying there isn't enough money in the state budget to add up to 20,000 new public school students.
I am hopeful. I hope that more families enroll them in kinder and have them be here because it's so important. And I've noticed such a big difference in the students that didn't have the kindergarten years and the students that do have it.
California children who are 5 years old are eligible for kindergarten, but they're not required by law to attend school until they're 6. Even though the governor vetoed mandatory kindergarten, he has supported other options for early childhood education. That includes allocating $1 billion in the current state budget to begin phasing in the expansion of transitional kindergarten, eventually to include every 4-year-old child. Back at high-tech High Mesa Elementary, the school director hopes the governor might reconsider the value of mandating kindergarten.
All of what they do is authentic work. Their play is authentic. Their talk is authentic. They think about what they've learned at home or in their own community settings, and they bring it into the school.
Ian already knows what he wants to be when he grows up.
A scientist.
Why?
Because I like making potions and doing experiments.
And he is off to a great start. MG Perez, KPBS News.
Less than 2 months after declaring an emergency over monkeypox, San Diego County health officials say things are improving with more resources available. They say there have been 404 cases here, but no deaths. KPBS reporter Kitty Alvarado has an update.
The county health department says there's been a slowdown in monkeypox cases.
We may have hit a peak around the week of August 6th in terms of the most amount of cases that we were seeing. And we've continued to see a downward trend in cases since that time.
That's Dr. Ankitha Kadakia, the deputy public health officer for San Diego County. She says at the peak, they saw 55 cases, but last week there were 4. She says declaring a health emergency in August allowed the county to access state funding to build up its testing, vaccine supplies, and infrastructure. But because there was a vaccine shortage at first, using a different method to give the vaccines was a game changer.
Now we're able to do intradermal vaccine. So this is vaccination that is given just below the skin, and that can give us up to 5 doses per vial, which definitely impacted our epidemiology curve, meaning more people with shots in arms means fewer cases of Mpox.
And she says the county is able to offer more vaccination events. High priority is given to gay and bisexual men who are at high risk for the disease.
We do have a mass vaccination event that has been occurring last week, this week, and next week, where we have 500 vaccines available a day, Tuesday through Saturdays. And this is at the Golden Hills Community Club, also known as the Golden Hills Rec Center, which is in Balboa Park.
Vaccines are also available at clinics around the county. People can make appointments online at myturn.ca.gov. Kitty Alvarado, KPBS News.
A power inequity in the most literal sense. A new study says California's high electricity rates unfairly hurt the poor. It urges regulators to reconsider how they charge for power. KPBS environment reporter Eric Anderson has the details.
Half to two-thirds of the cost of a kilowatt of electricity in California is unrelated to the actual cost of that power. A new report commissioned by the nonpartisan group Next 10 found San Diego gas and electric customers paid an average of $786 a year in 2019 on this hidden tax.
Most of these costs that we've added into electricity bills are things we generally think of as public goods, whether it's mitigating wildfire danger or subsidizing rooftop solar or subsidizing low-income bills. All of those things, in other contexts, we generally pay for through the state budget.
Borenstein says the state's high electricity prices are disproportionately hitting the poor, and regulators should consider changing how they charge for electricity. Per kilowatt fees would be based on the actual cost of power and how much electricity a resident uses. A flat income-based connection fee would pay for grid maintenance and expansion costs.
There is a paragraph in the budget bill that says the CPUC shall adopt income-based fixed charges. What it doesn't specify is how large those income-based fixed charges are going to be, but it does mean that the CPUC is instructed to create this entire approach.
There is concern high electricity rates will discourage people from making decisions crucial to slowing climate change, like buying electric vehicles or zero-emission heat pump systems for heating and cooling homes.
We are committed as a state to hitting our climate goals. The legislature and the governor are really important in terms of determining whether or not the electricity rates will be able to support the climate goals that we have in mind here.
Perry says restructuring electricity bills would show customers the real cost of electricity by separating all those extra expenses that are currently rolled into the kilowatt price. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
And utility bills are rising across the country. One organization is now predicting home heating costs this winter will reach the highest level in more than 10 years. Mike Valerio reports.
Winter is coming, and with it, a cold reality. The cost to heat your home is expected to skyrocket.
You know, missed the payment. Next thing you know, the power was off.
Kristen Blom Westbrook's family was among the roughly 20 million American households behind on their utility bills, the highest on record, according to the National Energy Assistance Directors Association. And the problem is only getting worse. The organization says families are expected to pay an average of 17.2% more for home heat this coming season compared to last winter.
Energy inflation is leading inflation overall. This is not normal.
Energy prices are on the rise in part because of the repeated heat waves that baked much of the U.S. this summer, worsening the already strained levels of natural gas reserves. NIATA Executive Director Mark Wolf says the spike will force families to make difficult decisions between paying for food, medicine, and rent.
We're seeing numbers for middle-income families go higher, and many of those families also are in very tight budgets.
The Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program is now asking Congress for an additional $5 billion to help low-income families. Mike Valerio, KPBS News.
If you filled up your car this weekend, you paid more than $2 per gallon more than the national average. AAA is reporting another 3-cent jump for gas, putting the local average at $5.78. The recent spike is more than 50 cents over the past 3 weeks. AAA says part of the reason is due to the lowest oil inventory in a decade in our region due to unplanned maintenance at oil refineries. Huge multinational companies like Cisco, Microsoft, GE, and JP Morgan are expected to release their earnings in coming weeks. And experts say if we want to know where the U.S. economy is headed, we should pay close attention to corporate earnings to find out. As Jen Sullivan reports, it comes as one major company is warning a global recession could be ahead.
Soaring inflation and interest rates in the U.S. and a war and energy crisis overseas. And now, at least one major multinational corporation is sounding the alarm, warning that a global recession could be ahead.
The recession risks are high everywhere
in many parts of the world a lot higher than they are here.
FedEx says the weakening economy could cause it to fall $500 million short of its revenue target. The shipping giant says it's temporarily parking some cargo planes and closing offices after demand for packages crumbled. Earlier this month, FedEx CEO was asked if he thinks we're headed for a global recession.
Well, I'm not an economist, but you know,
you know more than economists. Come on, they just push papers. You actually look at papers.
Well, I think so.
Meanwhile, many independent contractors who make deliveries for the company are raising concerns, saying rising costs for fuel, labor, and new vehicles have made their businesses unprofitable, with some threatening to halt operations on Black Friday. Experts say because FedEx ships a huge variety of goods across the world, it's a good measure of how the global economy is doing. Economists say FedEx is also struggling with a big shift in consumer preferences as the economy opens up and we're not buying as many online goods compared to earlier in the pandemic.
This shift in what consumers are spending their money on is really having a big impact on companies like FedEx.
But is the slowdown at FedEx isolated? Experts say we'll find out soon as earnings reports from retailers and manufacturers are released in the coming weeks. That data could give investors a better idea of how the economy is doing amid growing recession fears. Jen Sullivan, KPBS News.
A state of emergency in Florida. Hurricane Ian is forecast to become a major hurricane, predicted to strike the Gulf Coast with life-threatening force. Connor Powell has the latest.
This could be the storm that we've hoped would never come to our shores.
The threat of a force we haven't seen in our lifetime. That's the worry of officials across Florida and national forecasters in Tampa, where the last major hurricane to make a direct strike was over 100 years ago.
Floridians up and down the Gulf Coast should feel the impacts of this as up to 36 hours before actual landfall due to the size of the hurricane. This is a really, really big hurricane at this point. The diameter, the width of it's about 500 miles wide.
The threat of Hurricane Ian triggering an installation-wide mandatory evacuation on the MacDill Air Force Base and prompting mandatory evacuations in parts of Hillsborough County, where schools are now closed through at least Thursday. Officials aren't mincing words in warning people to act now.
Well, you certainly can replace personal possessions. You can't bring anyone back to life. And I think these last couple of years with these superstorms, if that hasn't shown us how devastating Mother Nature can be, Mother Nature always wins. This is nothing to mess around with. If you can leave, just leave now, and we will take care of your personal property.
In Jacksonville, Florida, Connor Powell, KPBS News.
We've had some toasty September days, and we are looking at that warmth sticking with us as we head into tomorrow. But hey, it's going to gradually get better as we go through the rest of the week, especially towards the end of it. However, there will be some thunderstorms through some of the mountains as we shift around the flow. So basically, we've had that persistent offshore flow that's kept us so warm and dry. That is going to change. But we do know heat advisories, excessive heat warnings still in place for many out there. So be cautious. Make sure that you're prepared because it doesn't, again, feel like September very much outside. 61 the low tonight in Oceanside. For the city, we're looking at 68 degrees. As you head towards Borrego Springs, holding on to the mid-70s here, but still not seeing any problems as we keep things dry. That's part of this high pressure system, which again still has that somewhat offshore flow for us as we go through Tuesday, and that's going to continue here, keeping us fairly quiet right to tomorrow. And tomorrow on the board, we've got numbers back towards 80 in San Diego, 82 in Oceanside, but then 90s just as you get inland, 92 in Escondido, and Ramona coming in at 97. Well, meanwhile, Borrego Springs is headed to the triple digits. Wednesday, what type of relief do you get? Well, again, that offshore flow eases. We're going to start to pick up some more influences of showers and thunderstorms, mostly well to the east of our area, but a few folks will get into it on Thursday. So for the coast, we're holding on to the 80s, a little bit more comfortable. If you're right by the beaches, that's at least a little more bearable for us, but extra clouds then come in for Friday and Saturday as the pattern shifts around on us. Thursday, though, still fairly warm for our inland locations in the 90s, but like I said, in the midweek, we're going to start to ease off, and that gets way better by the late week. And for mountain locations, we could add a shower or thunderstorm in a few spots as we head through Thursday. It's not going to be a ton of wet weather, but there is that chance for a little bit of rain out there, and that does help to knock our temperatures down for the week. And for desert locations in the triple digits till we ease off heading into the weekend. For KPBS News, I'm AccuWeather meteorologist Melissa Constanzer.
The high cost of prescription drugs is more about profit than performance, according to a new international study involving UCSD. In 2019, U.S. prescription drugs brought in $490 billion in revenue, and that works out to $1,200 per person. The amount put into research and development that same year was $83 billion. More details are published in the JAMA Open Network Medical Journal. The robots in your body, tiny robots in your body delivering drugs to the place they're needed the most, might sound like a futuristic fantasy, but this direct drug delivery, as it's called, is actually happening now in lab mice at UC San Diego. KPBS SciTech reporter Thomas Fudge has more.
Tiny robots made from algae are swimming through the lung fluids of mice, delivering antibiotics straight to the bacteria that causes a deadly form of pneumonia. Nanoparticles loaded with medicine are attached to the microrobots, and it all enters the lungs.
They can actively swim in the body fluid, and they can really dig into the deep part of the tissue and then carry a large amount of these therapeutic payloads to the disease sites, and then very effectively kill the bacteria.
Zhang said the results of the experiment were dramatic. The mice treated with drugs in a conventional way died within days.
Treated by this unique formulation, all the testing animals survived. It's 100% survival rate.
Anyone who has swallowed an aspirin knows one very conventional way of delivering drugs. The medication is ingested and is carried throughout the body.
Directly you take the pill, it's all passive. The drug goes slowly by diffusion. By having dynamic active delivery, we are accelerating targeted delivery to the right location with accelerated delivery.
Joseph Wang's lab at UCSD offers many examples of microrobots designed to navigate the body's channels and cavities. The algae robot is organic and swims with its flagella. Another robot made from zinc reacts with gastric fluid and generates hydrogen gas, which propels it like a true rocket. Wang points out the algae robot is not attracted to the bacteria, but they move so effectively through the fluids of the lung that it greatly improves the dispersion of the drug. Wang has actually loaded microrobots into pills, including aspirin. The purpose of this research, of course, is not to treat mice, but humans. Zhang said the study of algae robots in the lungs is very innovative and experimental.
In this paper, we demonstrated the feasibility of the technology. And what I foresee is we need to do more study along the line to demonstrate the efficacy in large animal species.
That means clinical trials in humans are a long ways off. Thomas Fudge, KPBS News.
Like so many businesses during the pandemic, a coffee shop in the Paradise Hills neighborhood of San Diego had to close soon after COVID hit. Now, KPBS reporter Claire Tregeser shows us what happened next.
As soon as it opened in 2017, Project Rio Collective was the place to be in the neighborhood. People took meetings there, kids did homework. It became a watering hole for the community. But then COVID struck and Project Rio Collective shut down in April 2020. This past weekend, that changed. Original owners Tommy and Danielle Walker had a grand opening for a new shop called The Mental Bar.
It was important for us to bring community space to this neighborhood. Where we are, there's no coffee shops that represent like who we are or represent us. We felt that it was important to bring something like that to this neighborhood.
It took 2.5 years to reopen at a new location on Imperial Avenue in the Encanto neighborhood.
Right from the start was supply chain, waiting on different parts, equipment, everything we needed just to create the space was the hardest part.
And then there was COVID, right? So that delayed a lot. We started like right in the midst of it.
Walker says he hopes the new location will continue to be a thriving business in its neighborhood.
We wanted to create that third space, that space where you could come after work or after sitting in the house to commune with your neighbors, sit in and have a nice cup of coffee or tea, whatever your beverage of choice is, in a comfortable space, and create ideas and exchange ideas and have a meeting space.
In addition to coffee, the shop will offer teas and food with a focus on wellness. Claire Tregesser, KPBS News.
Wave FC play their final match of the regular season Friday night at Snapdragon Stadium, but they have more to look forward to. Last night in Orlando, the team clinched a playoff spot, a first for an expansion team in the National Women's Soccer League. They did it thanks to a second-half comeback that secured a tie and a point in the standings. The playoffs will begin the weekend of October 15th.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, Italy elects its first far-right government since World War II. That's coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
And here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow. In the KPBS newsroom, a big part of wildfire prevention is prescribed burns. NPR's Morning Edition looks at the delays in doing so that's putting the popular resort town of Big Bear at risk. And KPBS Midday Edition talks with local illustrator Rafael Lopez about his latest work, The Little Book of Joy, by spiritual leaders Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama. And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Good night.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.